Hi friends, your pal Scott Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about the long walk and what is an acceptable shape of a story. So I was really fascinated by the long walk. This movie came out, and I was like, why did this, why wasn't this? And then someone I know who's a huge Stephen King fan said this is one of his best books. I was like, well, if that's the case, why haven't they converted it earlier, right? And he said, well, it's one of the Bachman books. And so so I've listened to about 30 or 40 of King's books. This person's listened to about 90% and re-listened to many multiple times. So they're way more of a King fan than I. So I'm kind of I like Stephen King, but he has some really dedicated fans. And so it was explained that this was a Richard Bachman book, and that what the Bachman books were doing was there was a point where Stephen King started to turn in some books that he was like, hey, I don't want every book to have this cohesive, pat ending. Life isn't like that. Sometimes life just has really difficult, uh, there's no pat answers, there's no strong ending. There's not something that everybody's gonna be like, oh, that was a good ending. I want to write books without a good ending, like that have an ending that matches real life. And his editors were like, hey, listen, you write bangers, and you know how to make a book accessible to to the crowds, right? And so if you have to write these books, why don't we just put them out under an alternate, right? Like, because we don't want to muddy your track record. People want to think that when they buy a Stephen King book, it has a cohesive ending, an ending that has some meaning or purpose. Nobody wants to read, these a story that doesn't go anywhere, or that has a lifelike ending that is like, well, I don't know what lesson that teaches, right? And so there was this question of whether the editors were right or wrong, right? And they did this with the Last Walk. So spoilers at this point. Um, so the Last Walk, the film, actually has a cohesive ending. Pete actually kills the Major for Ray, right? To fulfill Ray's wish, right? And then you're like, okay, that's a good ending, right? That's an ending that is logical. That's an ending you're like, oh, revenge is fulfilled, right? And it comes full circle, right? Now, was King right, or were his editors right? Well, it turns out his editors were right. The Bachman books did not outsell the Stephen King books. People didn't pick these up and go, "Oh, this is a great story." They were like, "That's fine." Like, yeah, and they sold mediocre. He did not outsell his. So the lesson for us as dungeon masters is to understand this, right? The other thing that is to understand that people want an ending that has meaning and purpose, an ending that comes full circle, an ending that is cohesive, like has feels full, right? And so one of and also what's really interesting is Stephen King ended up being able to fulfill his own desires and write these meaningless endings, right? And the reason why was he was such a performer. But I think for us as dungeon masters, it's important that we understand this, and that we do not give in to selfishness, and that we try as best we can to form a cohesive answer. Now, with Dungeons and Dragons, there's always a chance that's not going to happen, because that story is being crafted by three forces: us, the dungeon master, the players, and fate itself. And that is something that's really unique with Dungeons and Dragons, the way it circles in on that. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider like, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.